Hi, Spirit Beings. This is Bill of the Universe, and I'd like to do an astrological analysis on the characters from Stranger Things. I only do sidereal astrology, so stick around. Through studying the charts of the main actors, I've been able to spot some really cool and interesting patterns going on through the characters' relationships with each other, as well as dominating planets influencing the casting and behavior of the characters. So stick around and enjoy the opening your third eye. Moon and K2. The first thing I want to cover is the overwhelming influence of the following two planets, Moon and K2. K2, or South Node, is an invisible planet that rules over the ancient past, more specifically the time before the Big Bang. K2 represents everything at the subatomic level, the subconscious, and metaphysically, past lives. K2 breaks everything apart, destigmatizes, and disillusions whatever it touches. So people ruled by this profound planet can deal with, well, anything on the subatomic level, including ghosts, manifestations, psychic activity, murder, and anything else that's really taboo. People whose charts that are strongly influenced by this planet make great detectives because of K2's tendency to break things down. They're also very non-conformal, so their minds are a lot more intellectually open and receptive. This can make them more able to see ghosts, spirits, aliens, and anything else supernatural. K2 ruled stars reside in the fire signs, so Aswini lives in Aries constellation, Magha lives in the Leo constellation, and Mula lives in the Sagittarius constellation. With these signs being fire signs, this makes the actors well suited for drama and the arts in general because fire is very creative and passionate and more times than not dramatic. Finn Wolfhard has his sun in Mula and moon in Magha, making this double fire and double K2 energy. Caleb McLaughlin has his moon in Magha, Joe Keery has his sun in Ashwini, and Maya Hawke has her moon in Mula. As far as the rest of the cast, they are overwhelmingly ruled by one planet, the moon. The moon is by far the most receptive planet in astrology. It's an incredibly intuitive planet, very nurturing and emotional. The moon waxes and wanes, so like the moon, people ruled by the moon are susceptible to emotional ups and downs, oversensitivity. These are also some of the more psychic placements. The moon rules stars live in the earth signs. So the star Rohini resides in the Taurus constellation, Hasta lives in the Virgo constellation, and Shravana lives in the Capricorn constellation. Millie Bobby Brown has her moon in Shravana. Noah Schnapp has his sun in Hasta and moon in Rohini. Gaten Matarazzo could have his moon in Hasta, but it's unclear because I don't know his birth time, so it's not safe to assume. And Natalie Dyer has her moon in Rohini. The moon can be really viewed as a princess or someone who's being taken care of. Someone who's kind of helpless, someone who has more spiritual strength than physical strength. So the moon is probably the best planet suited for a cast of mostly kids. People who still live and depend on mom and dad. Kids are typically more sensitive than the rest of us and more spiritually open, adding to the notion that kids see ghosts easier than adults can. Even adults with a moon placement, specifically Hasta, are so many times teachers or deal with kids in their occupations. There's definitely an immature yet endearing and psychically open energy associated with the moon. But regardless of whether this cast is being ruled by Moon or K2, these two planets are both very feminine, which makes them psychically receptive to supernatural experiences. According to Claire Nakhti, the moon stars Rohini, Hasta, and Shravana can tend to have this type of chosen one vibe, more specifically Shravana. I personally think they all have this kind of vibe, especially given the fact that almost all the main characters have a moon placement. It's almost as if they've all been chosen as a team together to take on this incredible otherworldly journey. It should also be known that because feminine energy is so receptive, Moon and K2 people often attract things. So in retrospect, none of these people asked to be in these situations. The situations constantly happen upon them. Violent things that want to consume and kill, which is very masculine. So it's no surprise that these feminine Moon and K2 natives are attracting these violent situations. The last time I saw this much moon in K2, I was making my astrology and witchcraft video, in which I did an analysis on Barbara Eden from I Dream a Genie and Elizabeth Montgomery from Bewitched. So it's no surprise that this show, with all its supernatural themes, encased so much moon and K2 energy. Sadie Sink is the only cast member of Stranger Things with both a K2 and moon dominant placement. And speaking of Sadie Sink, let's talk about partnership compatibility. Max and Lucas. In the show, Max and Lucas are an item for quite a bit. Max, played by Sadie Sink, is an Ashwini sun and Rohini moon. Lucas, played by Caleb McLaughlin, is a Chitra sun and Magha moon. So this is all K2 and moon energy, with the exception of Caleb's sun and Chitra. Chitra is a star within Virgo that is ruled by Mars. So here's a Mars boy with a K2 girl. It's actually widely accepted in Jyotish that K2 and Mars are most similar to each other, both being potentially spontaneous, angry, immature, and kind of violent. They both make great soldiers. In fact, K2-ruled star Mula is often associated with military and police and firefighters, so it makes sense that Max and Lucas are paired up. There's so much in common. Mike and Eleven. Mike, played by Finn Wolfhard, is a Mula sun and Magha moon. Double K2, double fire energy. Millie Bobby Brown is a Dhanishta sun and Shavana moon. This is literally the same ruling planets as Max and Lucas. It's all K2 and moon energy, with the exception of Millie's sun in Dhanishta. But again, this star is ruled by Mars, just like Caleb's is. With Millie's Mars sun and Finn's K2 sun, this is a recreation of the same formula used in Max and Lucas' pairing. Even with their moon signs, K2 and moon energy, lots of understanding, love, and receptivity. Nancy and Steve. Nancy, played by Natalie Dyer, is an Uttara Ashada sun and possibly a Rohini moon, while Steve, played by Joe Keery, is an Ashwini sun and Uttara Ashada moon. This means that her sun is conjunct his moon, and that's a really nice combination. When someone's sun is conjunct at someone else's moon, there's a real type of soulmate connection. So this is common in couples who are very passionate with each other. In this sun-moon conjunction, the sun person plays the dominant role. And you can see in their relationship that even though Steve is very pursuant, it's ultimately Nancy that decides how fast things progress. She's also a lot more decisive, mature, and motivated. Ultimately, this might not be a great pairing, simply because with Joe Keery being the Uttarashada moon, this makes him a sun native. And sun natives are notoriously single, many of them marrying late in life or never at all. This kind of moon placement in a man can make him a bit of a player, and we definitely see that in his character in Stranger Things. This might make Natalie's Rohini moon seem relatively clingy. But solarly, Nancy is the masculine energy, and Steve is the feminine energy. Which is kind of funny because Joe's the one with the cute butt, and Natalie is the one with the more boyish figure. Nancy and Jonathan. Nancy would probably do better with Jonathan because his moon is in the feminine Mula, which is a nice match for Nancy's feminine moon. She really is so pretty, and having a moon-ruled star prominent in your chart can make you very beautiful. Marilyn Monroe was Rohini, just like Natalie. And doesn't Charlie Heaton look like Harry Styles? Harry Styles is a moon native just like Charlie Heaton. But I digress. Putting their charts together, it looks like while Nancy might be more motivated and social, unlike Jonathan, both of them alone in private can make a very caring and loving relationship. One last thing to mention about partnerships. I find it interesting that all the couples involved with each other do have a K2, Mars, or Sun placement. But the only other person who seems to be perpetually single is Will, played by Noah Schnapp. Noah Schnapp has double moon energy. And like I said, there's a real immature yet endearing quality to moon people. I really do think that it's in his strong moon influence that keeps him not quite ready to grow up as fast as the other kids, amongst other reasons. But it's also interesting to mention that Noah Schnapp is the youngest of the kids, before Priya's character became prominent in Season 3. Character types. Steve Harrington, the handsome type. In a study done by Claire Nakhti, The biggest indicator of a handsome man was Uttara Shada moon. So this makes a lot of sense why they chose Joe Keery to play the handsome Steve Harrington. It also really helps that his Ashwini sun is exalted, being in Aries. The nerds. The moon can have, like I said, a real innocent, soft, endearing quality to it. It's also a bit dorky and nerdy. A lot of them are bookworms, they like studying, get good grades, and are more likely to be interested in fantasy-related activities. Moon kids are good kids for the most part, so it's not a surprise that these boys fit the nerdy template really nicely. They might actually be dorks in real life. But what's interesting is, of the original 4, Caleb is the only kid without any moon placements, excluding him from the nerd theory. But it's funny because in season 4, he actually branches out and is the only one in the group that becomes popular with his peers. And Mars-ruled people can easily be popular through many means. For Lucas, it makes sense that he becomes popular through basketball because his sun is ruled by Mars, and Mars is a fighter and a soldier. But, like the soldier, he has a loyalty to his team. I also really respect how in the end of season 1, he was the only kid who had the balls to take a weapon to the Gormagon. And despite the Gormagon's defeat not being because of Lucas, it shows a lot of bravery and sacrifice to stand up to the Gormagon and take a shot. I also love how he talks about relationships like it's a battlefield, and how he must march into battle and win the woman. That is so soldier of him, right? And who was the one who defeated the Gormagon? Another Mars native. Gaten Matarazzo is a Purva Falguni sun, and possibly a Hasta moon. In the show, Gaten's character, Dustin, is by far the most brainy and possibly the smartest one of his group. He's certainly the most technical, and Gaten's Purva Falguni sun definitely supports that. Purva Falguni, while being in the constellation of sexual Leo, is actually quite a genius star. Venus-ruled stars in general are quite brilliant. Natalie Portman, a Harvard graduate, is a Purva Falguni native. Madonna, who was tested at genius levels, is a Purva Falguni native. And Elon Musk, founder of SpaceX, is a Purva Falguni native. I even know in my personal life several doctors who are Purva Falguni natives. So there's a real mathematical, scientific side to this sensual star within Leo. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Dustin is the first of all the boys to have a girlfriend, a girl he met in science camp, which totally adds to the notion that Leos are so desirous yet intellectual. The leaders. Eleven and Mike can be seen as the leaders of their group, which astrologically makes sense. Millie Bobby Brown is an Aquarius sun, and Finn Wolfhard is a Sagittarius sun. This is really reminiscent of when I did the Great Leaders of the Past video, where I researched the charts of Washington, Hamilton, Einstein, Marie Antoinette, and Queen Elizabeth. The most prominent signs in these great leaders were overwhelmingly Aquarius and Sagittarius. Aquarius and Sagittarius are both masculine energies, which creates great leadership. And both signs, being in the last part of the zodiac, can greatly indicate maturity associated with these signs. Aquarius' ruler Saturn being the great humanitarian and equalizer, and Sagittarius' ruler Jupiter being the visionary of a great merciful utopia. These signs are also incredibly visionary and often, according to my research, contemplate the mechanics of a greater future. Joyce and Hopper. What's interesting is, while the kids are being ruled by psychically aware Ketu, the adults are being ruled by the materialistic and conniving Rahu. Rahu is an incredibly smoky planet and an incredibly illusionary planet. And when I say smoky, I literally mean smoky. A lot of these people ruled by Rahu are actual smokers and drinkers, and in my opinion go above and beyond to cover up anything that might make them an outcast or pariah in society. Which is really ironic because if you knew Rahu people, they're actually quite weird and way more sensitive than they appear. But regardless, Rahu is an elusive planet. In the show, Joyce has her home set up more in the woodsy part of town. And I know Rahu people who live in the woods. And speaking of Rahu being smoky, even when I did the 9/11 video, Rahu was sitting at the 10th house, the most prolific and public house in the zodiac. There's not a clear understanding of what's behind the facade when it comes to Rahu. Winona Ryder has her sun and moon ruled by Rahu. When it comes to her and David Harbour's relationship, she is quite hesitant about a lot of her true feelings, more often than not ditching the opportunity to be vulnerable, which kind of perpetuates the whole will they or won't they trope, also perpetuating Winona's character to be so elusive. But it's interesting that Rahu is a smoky planet because the one time we do get to glance into Joyce's past is when Hopper and Joyce reminisce on their high school days when they used to smoke under the bleachers. They said as they smoked a cigarette. Smoking is something Pisces likes to do as well. Not specifically smoke, but Pisces pushes the physical boundaries and can also be quite aloof and private, and they really like to isolate themselves and kind of go into their own little world, which is kind of Rahu in a sense. David Harbour is a Pisces sun and moon. Rahu and Pisces can kind of share this fear of being overly vulnerable, so they kind of become aloof creatures. Not to say they're not social, because Rahu and Pisces, in my opinion, are some of the more social creatures of the zodiac. But what I mean is, they can hide in plain sight. It's like you think you know these people well, but there's something to them you never really get to become intimately familiar with, unless there's a lot of trust between the two. And I think Hopper and Joyce share this type of energy. They both have this great need to protect themselves from the world, and I think they both see that in each other. Like all adults, they have a past. And I do find it interesting that Winona Ryder's actual Ketu is in Cancer, the sign of the mothers. But with Rahu ruling over the future, maybe Winona's character is a nice way of looking at these adults as just kids, but in the future. Alright folks, thank you for letting me indulge in my favorite things, Vedic astrology. I hope you liked it. I always make my videos with passion and love. Until next time, take care.